The billionaire looked down at him and said, "I don't shake hands with staff." Malik Carter's lips stayed pressed together, a calm mask over the storm raging inside him. The room felt impossibly large, though he'd walked into boardrooms of similar size before. Glass walls, marble floors, and the faint hum of climate control gave the illusion of control. Control that, right now, belonged entirely to one man. Maxwell Davenport, tech magnate and self-proclaimed visionary, was perched at the head of the polished mahogany table like a king observing peasants. His eyes, cold and calculating, flicked over Malik as if he were a misplaced artifact. "You must be Malik Carter," Davenport continued, his voice smooth but dripping with condescension. "I understand you're, what is it, an entrepreneur? Consultant? Intern-level chaos coordinator." His grin stretched impossibly wide. "Tell me, how does someone from your background even get through our security gates?" Malik felt the words like tiny cuts, but he refused to react. Instead, he stepped closer, the faint scuff of his polished shoes on the floor announcing each measured step. Every eye in the room, from board members to Davenport's personal assistants, followed him like a predator observing prey. Malik's gaze, however, wasn't on them. It was on the billionaire's hands, folded arrogantly on the table. "I'm here to present a solution," Malik said evenly, voice steady. "Not to entertain. Not to impress. To solve a problem that's costing you billions." Davenport laughed, a sound that ricocheted off the marble walls. "Billions, you say?" Bold words for someone who looks like they might not even own a suit off the rack. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. "I don't shake hands with staff." A tense silence followed, the sort that stretched so long the ticking of the oversized wall clock became a drumbeat of inevitability. Malik's hand twitched slightly, not out of fear, but in preparation. He could feel the ripple of judgment, the unspoken assumption that he was beneath them. But beneath the billionaire's arrogance, he had detected something else. A fissure, an unspoken vulnerability masked by wealth and ego. "Good," Malik said finally, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Then let's skip the theatrics." He placed a slim folder on the table, sliding it across so the glossy cover caught the light just enough to reflect Davenport's sharp gaze. Davenport murmured, inspecting it as though touching it could reveal a hidden flaw. "And what exactly is in here that warrants a human like you walking into my office?" Malik leaned against the edge of the table, not in subservience, but in measured confidence. "Inside, you'll find data, real numbers, verifiable impact, projections you've never had your analysts consider. I'm not asking for a handshake. I'm asking for attention. That's all it takes to start a $4 billion shift." Davenport's smirk faltered slightly. "4 billion? That's—" He stopped mid-laugh, unsure whether he was incredulous or impressed. The room shifted, subtly, as if sensing the billionaire's first crack in the facade. The board members, many of whom had sat silently, shifting papers or adjusting ties, began to lean in. They had seen Davenport humiliate hundreds of people, but rarely had anyone entered his office with such calm certainty. There was a quiet, collective curiosity now, a hum beneath the conversation, like static before a storm. "You have 5 minutes," Davenport said finally, voice colder now. "Convince me or leave. And don't waste my time." Malik opened the folder slowly, letting the leather edges whisper against the polished wood. Charts, graphs, and proprietary analytics stared back at Davenport, each page more damning than the last. Malik's plan wasn't merely theoretical. It was surgical, designed to expose inefficiencies and hidden vulnerabilities that even Davenport's inner circle hadn't fully grasped. "You're looking at a pattern," Malik said, voice calm but precise. "A flaw in your global operations. Companies you consider secure are bleeding capital. Billions. Because of systematic mismanagement in overlooked markets. You've built walls around your empire, yet inside those walls, your assets are vulnerable to miscalculations, to perception, to talent that isn't fully recognized." The billionaire frowned, leaning forward slightly. "You mean to tell me," Davenport said, "that a kid from the projects, without a pedigree, without a boardroom legacy, has figured out vulnerabilities that my analysts missed?" Malik let the silence stretch, a deliberate pause designed to press on ego and impatience simultaneously. Not a kid. Not a project product. Someone who has spent years studying these systems from the inside, understanding leverage points, and knowing that people, like your staff, your partners, your investors, often underestimate the wrong person. Davenport's eyes narrowed. "And what do you want exactly?" Malik smiled faintly, just enough to unsettle the billionaire. "I want access to your upcoming merger data. I want to show you how $4 billion could be redirected efficiently, and I want your board to see it before the market reacts. Access. Davenport echoed, incredulous. You think I hand over proprietary information to someone I've barely tolerated in this room? Bold. Dangerous. And quite frankly naive. Malik's gaze didn't waver. He didn't flinch, didn't falter. Call it what you want. I call it foresight. You have 5 minutes, Maxwell. Either we make this decision, or your empire spends the next fiscal quarter bleeding billions unnecessarily. The choice is yours. A tense hush fell over the room. Even the secretary, normally unseen, hovered near the doorway, her presence signaling that something important had been whispered moments earlier. Something Malik had noticed immediately. A subtle nod, almost imperceptible, that suggested she trusted him over Davenport. Davenport sat back, hands folded again, face unreadable. You're either brilliant or insane, he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. Malik allowed himself a brief inhale, counting the seconds, knowing that timing and perception were as lethal as any spreadsheet. He opened the first page and started his explanation with precision, pointing out overlooked investments, international contracts, and emerging markets where a simple oversight had cost Davenport untold millions. Each revelation landed like a hammer striking steel. The billionaire's smirk wavered. Board members exchanged glances. Phones were subtly angled to record, emails were typed faster, and whispers began circulating. Who is this guy? Davenport interrupted, voice sharp. Do you know what you're risking, Malik? If you're wrong, this room will make sure you never work in this sector again. Malik met the billionaire's gaze evenly. And if I'm right? Davenport's eyes flicked to the folder, then back at Malik. He leaned back, a faint tension visible around his jaw. Then, he said slowly, you've just walked into the lion's den and survived the first test. But surviving is one thing, succeeding is another. Malik paused. He knew the real battle was only beginning. Success meant turning humiliation into leverage, turning doubt into credibility, and controlling an empire that had never acknowledged someone like him. And then he saw it. A small, discreet phone notification pop up on Davenport's screen. A single alert. The billionaire's face changed imperceptibly in that fraction of a second. A flicker of panic, a crack in the armor. Malik didn't move. He didn't need to. The room had already changed. The balance had shifted, and the first move had been made. 5 minutes, Malik said again, softer now, almost a whisper, and we change the game, or we let billions slip through your fingers. Your choice. Davenport's hand twitched toward the alert. The secretary's earlier signal replayed in Malik's mind. He knew exactly what that notification meant. An unplanned leak, a financial trigger, and a silent army waiting in the wings. The room held its collective breath as Malik reached for the next page, ready to pull the first domino. And then, just as he turned it, the phone buzzed again. Malik's eyes met Davenport's. This wasn't a bluff. This was real. The billionaire realized, in that instant, that he might have underestimated the wrong man. Malik Carter didn't flinch as Davenport's phone buzzed again. If anything, the faint quiver in the billionaire's hand fueled him. Every second that passed, every subtle glance, every whisper of unease was leverage. The room smelled faintly of coffee and expensive leather, but Malik's senses weren't on luxury. They were on opportunity. Every board member in the room had grown tense, eyes flicking between the folder on the table, Malik, and the billionaire, who was no longer radiating the same unshakable confidence. Look, Malik began, voice calm, almost conversational. You've built this empire on precision, innovation, and control. But control is an illusion if you overlook a single variable, the human factor. Every mismanaged contract, every unmonitored partnership, every decision based on ego instead of data costs you more than you realize. Right now, you're losing billions without even noticing. Davenport leaned forward, the first real sign of interest since Malik had walked in. Go on, he said, voice tight. I'm listening, though not convinced you know the difference between a spreadsheet and reality. Malik smiled faintly and turned the page in the folder. On the screen were detailed breakdowns of 3 of Davenport's largest international deals, contracts that had gone sour in the last 6 months. Each highlighted a misalignment between what his analysts predicted and the actual results in the field. But Malik's annotations weren't just observations. They were solutions, meticulously calculated for maximum impact. You see, Malik continued, your team assumed these markets were mature and stable. But subtle cultural and economic shifts, which your analysts dismissed as noise, created leverage points your competitors exploited. These 3 contracts alone could have netted you $4 billion more if managed correctly. And I've mapped a path to recover it before next quarter. The room grew heavy with tension. Davenport's assistants exchanged nervous glances. Malik could see them thinking, who is this man? How does he know this? And the method isn't complex, Malik said. It's about anticipating human reaction, about turning perception into profit. Most people in your circle overlook the fact that intelligence isn't measured in degrees, pedigree, or suits. It's measured in understanding systems, people, markets, timing. And you, sir, are about to see that underestimated talent can outperform an entire team of Ivy League graduates. Davenport's jaw tightened. So, what exactly are you proposing? You want full access to our systems? To our private financial data? Malik's gaze didn't waver. I want access to the upcoming merger files and your international portfolios. I will present a recovery plan with timelines, projections, and contingencies. You may not like my methods, but I guarantee you the outcome. For $1 billion in avoided losses, or better, redirected profits that your analysts would have never predicted. A murmur spread across the boardroom. Some of the board members shifted, whispering to each other. Others leaned in, eyes wide. The arrogance that had filled the room at Malik's entrance had evaporated like fog. For the first time, Davenport wasn't the only one with influence. Davenport waved his hand dismissively. And why would I trust you? One misstep, and this room will make sure you're never seen in business circles again. Malik's smile sharpened. Trust isn't my goal. Proof is. You'll have all the proof in 2 weeks. Fully verifiable, fully documented. Until then, you watch and see how $4 billion can shift under your nose, unseen by those who believe power comes from wealth alone. Davenport's eyes flicked to the folder again. His face was still unreadable, but the subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed a flicker of doubt. The board members noticed. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Malik had pierced the armor, just slightly, and that was all he needed. A quiet ping came from Davenport's phone. Malik noticed it immediately, a single notification. Not an email, not a text, but a flagged alert from the financial monitoring system that ran several of Davenport's international contracts. The billionaire's hand twitched, betraying the tension he was attempting to hide. Malik didn't move. He didn't need to. He had planted seeds weeks ago, carefully orchestrating small, imperceptible leaks to the network of financial analysts he had access to. Every time Davenport's system attempted to reconcile discrepancies, Malik's predictive models highlighted anomalies, slight but consistent. Now, the alert wasn't just a signal. It was the first domino in a sequence that could collapse Davenport's assumptions entirely. You're watching your empire, Malik said quietly, voice calm, and yet you can't see the cracks that are already costing you billions. You're looking at a system that's designed to fail under its own weight unless someone intervenes. That someone isn't a board member, isn't a high-paid analyst, isn't even your family's network of advisors. That someone is here. He tapped the folder lightly. And if you refuse, I guarantee that someone else will. Markets don't wait. Decisions don't wait. You will lose $4 billion if you do nothing. Davenport leaned back, his eyes narrowing. He was no longer laughing. The boardroom, once a theater of his power, now felt like a cage. Malik's calm authority was the invisible predator stalking every corner of the room. A faint sound from the hallway drew everyone's attention. A subtle click, the echo of a door opening. Malik had arranged for it. Not an intrusion, not a threat, but a carefully calculated psychological nudge. The board's attention sharpened, the billionaire's confidence destabilized. The room collectively tensed, watching Malik, watching Davenport, wondering what was about to happen next. 5 minutes, Malik said, as if repeating the phrase aloud held power over reality. And you either step up or step back. The decision isn't just yours, it's everyone's in this room. One move, one hesitation, and $4 billion disappears. Or appears. Your call. Davenport's hand hovered over his phone. He could feel the weight of the room, the silent calculation of risk and opportunity. He had underestimated Malik Carter. Not as a staff member, not as a man from the projects, not as someone without a pedigree. He had underestimated him as a force of intellect, strategy, and timing. Then the phone buzzed again. Malik's eyes flicked to it. A new alert, more urgent this time. Not from the monitoring system. Someone else had triggered a real-time update in one of Davenport's overseas accounts, highlighting discrepancies that matched Malik's predictions perfectly. The billionaire's face tightened. He looked around the room. The board members held their breath. Some subtly whispered, others simply stared. Malik met Davenport's gaze steadily. "You can ignore it," Malik said softly, "or you can watch the dominoes fall and hope someone else catches them in time." Davenport's hand closed over the phone. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, uncertainty. "Are you suggesting," Davenport's voice was low, almost hesitant, "that you can recover these billions?" Malik didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned in slightly, tilting the folder toward Davenport, and said, "Not recover. Redirect. And the best part? You don't have to lift a finger. Just watch and make the right call at the right time." The room seemed to hold its breath. The tension was palpable, almost like electricity arcing in the air. Malik's calm, precise tone had done something that decades of boardroom maneuvers had failed to do. It put Davenport on the defensive. The billionaire, whose arrogance had built an empire, was now uncertain, watching a man from the projects dictate terms to him without fear. Then, just as Malik began to outline the first steps of his strategy, Davenport's phone buzzed once more, this time multiple notifications arriving simultaneously. Malik's eyes narrowed. The billionaire's expression changed drastically, a fleeting moment of panic flashing across his face before his usual mask returned. Malik knew it was happening. The system had triggered exactly as he predicted. The first domino had fallen. And now, the billionaire had a choice: embrace the plan, or watch billions vanish in plain sight. Malik Carter smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, as he reached for the next page in the folder. And at that precise moment, the boardroom doors burst open. Every eye turned. Malik didn't flinch. He didn't move. But the tension inside the room spiked to a level no one had anticipated. A single figure stepped in. A figure that would tip the balance even further, and force Davenport to make a decision that could either save his empire or destroy it entirely. Malik's eyes met the newcomers, and a silent understanding passed between them. The room held its breath. And in that suspended moment, Malik knew the real game had only just begun. The doors slammed behind the newcomer, a tall man in a crisp grey suit, his expression unreadable, yet every subtle movement spoke of precision and intent. Malik didn't flinch. If anything, the entry had been expected. Every domino in his plan had a trigger, and this man, Elias Grant, was the final piece that would tip the scale. "Gentlemen," Elias said, voice low, deliberate, carrying a weight that silenced the murmurs in the room. "I hope you're ready for the truth." Davenport's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" Malik gestured subtly. "Someone who understands the rules the rest of you ignore." The patterns Davenport missed. The leverage his so-called analysts couldn't see. Elias stepped closer to the table, pulling out a small tablet. "This," he said, tapping the screen, "is a live feed of your international holdings, Mr. Davenport. Real-time discrepancies, unreported losses, and silent opportunities you've overlooked for years. And it's all mapped to exploit exactly what Mr. Carter predicted." A hush fell over the room. The board members shifted uncomfortably, realizing they were witnessing a level of analysis far beyond their comfort zone. Davenport's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "I don't understand. How is this possible? How do you have access to all of this?" Elias smiled faintly, almost pityingly. "Because the world isn't just spreadsheets and meetings. It's human behavior, timing, and subtle shifts in influence. Mr. Carter has been preparing this for months. You just never thought anyone outside your inner circle could see the patterns that govern billions of dollars." Malik leaned back slightly, his calm aura unshaken. "Every move you've made assumes loyalty, competence, and discretion from your team. But in reality, you're dealing with ambition, oversight, and pride. Combine those with global market anomalies, and you have a blind spot large enough to lose, literally, billions." Davenport's face twitched. "So what's your plan?" "You just point out where I'm failing." Malik's eyes flicked to him, ice-cold and unyielding. "No, I redirect. I intervene. And I make sure the gains go exactly where they should." Elias tapped the tablet, and the boardroom screen flickered to life with cascading charts and live feeds of trading anomalies, logistics bottlenecks, and corporate loopholes. Each feed highlighted opportunities Malik had preemptively identified: contracts vulnerable to renegotiation, delayed shipments, unclaimed tax credits, and market misalignments. Every single one could generate tens of millions in profit, undetected, untapped, and now, under Malik and Elias's coordinated control. Davenport's voice cracked, a rare and uncharacteristic tremor. "And you expect me to trust, what? A plan cooked up by someone I didn't even interview?" Malik didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pointed to one of the charts on the screen. Watch this. A contract in Southeast Asia. Your analysts predicted a loss of $400 million due to local inflation and shipping delays. But if you adjust the timelines by 11 days, leverage a secondary port, and restructure the payment schedule, you not only recover the expected loss, you gain $220 million above projections. And no one on your team saw it coming. The board members' jaws dropped. Whispers spread like wildfire. Did he just? No way, he's right there. Elias continued, voice precise, unemotional. And this is just one of dozens. Every anomaly, every overlooked pattern, every minor oversight has been mapped and exploited in real time. Mr. Carter has created a system to protect your empire, if you let him. Davenport's lips pressed together, the arrogance and overconfidence that had built his empire now clashing with a growing sense of panic. And if I refuse? Malik's gaze hardened. Then those same opportunities disappear. You watch billions slip away in ways your analysts will never understand. You could argue with me all day, but markets don't care about your pride. Suddenly, the tablet pinged. An alert that no one had seen before. A cascading red series of numbers indicating that a previously untraceable bond had matured early, creating a sudden liquidity event. Malik's eyes glimmered. This is the first trigger. If we act now, you secure $500 million in liquid assets before anyone even notices. Hesitate, and those funds vanish into unclaimed accounts. Gone. Invisible. Davenport's face blanched. The boardroom shifted. Whispers grew louder. Is this legal? One member asked nervously. Malik smirked faintly. Legal is subjective. Profitable is absolute. And the path we're taking? Fully legal, fully auditable, and fully irreversible once executed. You just have to approve the access. The billionaire hesitated. Every instinct screamed resistance, but he could feel it, like the floor slipping beneath him. Every decision delayed could cost him billions. His empire, his reputation, the image of control he had spent decades building. It all hung in the balance. Elias spoke again, voice cutting through the tension like steel. You built this empire on ego, Mr. Davenport. But ego doesn't move markets. Analysis, timing, and precision do. And right now, your empire is bleeding because you underestimated one thing. People like Malik Carter don't operate in your predictable patterns. Davenport's hand twitched over the tablet. The hesitation was almost palpable. And that was exactly what Malik and Elias needed. The room grew silent, all eyes on the billionaire. This was the moment of truth. Approve, and billions shifted invisibly into advantageous positions. Hesitate, and the losses were inevitable. Malik's voice, calm but cutting, filled the tension space. You can make a decision in the next 60 seconds, or watch as opportunities vanish. The choice is yours. And remember, every second you waste costs more than money. It costs leverage, strategy, and control. A quiet beep echoed. Another alert, this one showing a secondary market anomaly in Europe. Timing was crucial. A single miscalculation would lose $800 million. The board members collectively gasped, and Davenport finally swallowed, his ego clashing violently with his survival instinct. He pressed a button on the tablet, granting restricted access, his fingers trembling slightly. Malik nodded subtly to Elias. In an almost imperceptible motion, Elias initiated a sequence of rapid data transfers, real-time algorithmic trades, and portfolio reallocation. Charts on the screen began to shift, lines jumping upward, red turning to green in a mesmerizing display of financial orchestration. You're seeing it now, Malik said softly, but in 5 minutes, your loss isn't just prevented, it's reversed. All thanks to a few overlooked details and the right timing. Davenport's breath caught. $1.2 billion shifted, almost instantly, into advantageous positions. Another alert. $750 million. The room's energy shifted from tension to awe. The billionaire who once laughed at Malik's audacity now sat rigid, watching billions move without him lifting a finger. For billion total, Malik whispered to Elias, barely audible. If we execute the final phase flawlessly, he'll never see it coming, and he'll thank us for it. The board members were now frozen, some mouths agape, others taking frantic notes. Malik's prediction was happening live, and Davenport's empire was transforming before his eyes. Then the phone in Davenport's pocket vibrated violently. A news alert. Malik's planted story about a hidden market opportunity and executive oversight had gone viral, trending globally. Investors were reacting, stock prices surging, competitors repositioning. Davenport's face turned ashen. The billionaire who thought he controlled everything realized, for the first time, that the world was not just numbers. It was timing, strategy, and people who refused to be ignored. Malik's eyes gleamed. The final move comes in 10 minutes. Everything until now has been preparation. The $4 billion gain? That's about to become undeniable, irreversible, and credited to the very person you dismissed 5 minutes ago. Davenport's hands trembled over the tablet. And if I fail to comply? Malik leaned forward, his calm authority filling the room. Then you watch it vanish. Your empire, your pride, everything you thought unshakable gone. And no one will ever know why it happened. A deep silence fell. The boardroom collectively held its breath. Every second stretched into eternity. Malik's final maneuver, the part that would cement his control and the $4 billion in redirection, was ready to activate. The phone buzzed one last time. This alert was different. Immediate. Irreversible. Davenport looked up, fear and all warring in his expression. And then the screen went black. The room froze. The only sound was Malik's measured breathing. "Are you ready to see what happens when the underestimated don't ask permission?" he asked. No one moved. Everyone knew. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The first domino had fallen. The second would change everything. The room had gone still, the tension so thick it seemed to press against the walls. Malik's eyes scanned the boardroom, settling on Davenport, whose hands hovered over the tablet like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. Every second stretched unbearably, every heartbeat echoing like a drum. Malik didn't flinch. This was the moment he had orchestrated for months. The $4 billion maneuver was about to go live, and Davenport had no idea the full magnitude of what was coming. Elias leaned forward, voice low, almost a whisper meant only for Malik. The network synced. Every transaction, every hedge, every leverage point is ready. When I give the signal, it's unstoppable. We've accounted for every possible interference. Malik nodded. Good. Let's make history. He turned to Davenport, whose gaze had finally lifted from the tablet, panic creeping into the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Davenport," Malik said, voice calm but commanding. "You've spent decades building an empire on the assumption that you control the flow. But control is an illusion. Timing, strategy, and the willingness to act when others hesitate. That's true power. And in 5 minutes, the world will see what happens when you ignore someone you deemed insignificant." Davenport's lips pressed into a tight line. You can't just. Malik held up a hand, cutting him off. "Watch." Elias tapped the tablet. The boardroom screens flickered to life with live financial feeds, graphs, and heat maps across multiple continents. Every stock, every bond, every derivative that Davenport had overlooked in his arrogance now began to react in real time. The red lines of losses transformed into surging green, climbing exponentially. Traders on the feeds were visibly scrambling, some in disbelief, some panicking. A $2.1 billion gain appeared first. An overlooked Asian infrastructure bond adjusted to match Malik's predictive model. Davenport's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. That's impossible." "Not impossible," Malik corrected softly. "Predictable. When you know the patterns, you see what no one else does. But here's the thing, knowing is nothing without action." A notification pinged across the tablet, this one tied to the European energy sector. Malik's pre-programmed sequence exploited a tiny arbitrage window, instantly turning projected losses into $850 million in profit. Board members gasped, whispering among themselves. "4 billion, Malik murmured. "And counting." Davenport's face was pale, sweat forming at his temples. "Stop it. I don't authorize." Malik raised a single finger, stopping him mid-sentence. "You already did. 5 minutes ago. Your hesitation was your consent. Every move is legal, every gain auditable. And by the time you realize what happened, it's irreversible." Elias's fingers flew across the tablet. "The North American tech contracts are in play. By redirecting the logistics bottlenecks and exploiting vendor misalignments, we can secure another $950 million in gains. Execution complete in 30 seconds. The room's energy shifted from awe to frantic disbelief. Investors, market analysts, and news outlets were now reporting anomalies, stocks climbing inexplicably, markets reacting to invisible hands. Davenport tried to call his executives, but every line was dead. The system had been isolated, the gains flowing through channels no one could track in real time. Malik's gaze was sharp, almost predatory. "This is the cost of underestimating people. of dismissing talent because of arrogance, because you thought someone outside your inner circle couldn't make a difference. Suddenly, the tablet flashed another alert: South American commodities. A sudden price misalignment allowed Malik's algorithm to capture an additional $400 million. Davenport slumped in his chair, disbelief etched across his face. I don't understand. How is this happening? Elias tapped the tablet again. You built a system for control. But control is only an advantage if you understand its limits. Mr. Carter understands the limits of greed, pride, and blind trust. And now you're watching the consequences in real time. Malik leaned closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, meant only for Davenport. 5 minutes ago, you dismissed me. You laughed at the idea that someone could orchestrate a billion-dollar shift without your knowledge. That laughter? That was your downfall. Every second you hesitated, every arrogant dismissal, we turned it into leverage. The room's air seemed to hum with electricity as another alert pinged. This one global, multi-market. Malik had synchronized exchanges across Asia, Europe, and North America. The gains were cascading faster than anyone could track manually. $1.2 billion here, $600 million there, an almost invisible sequence of trades and reallocations. Davenport's empire had transformed under his eyes without a single conscious move from him. Board members looked at one another, fear and awe blending into a single emotion. The billionaire who once thought he controlled everything now realized the terrifying truth. He had been blind. Malik's voice cut through the tense silence again. $4 billion, Mr. Davenport. Not lost, not stolen, not predicted by your analysts. Controlled by someone you ignored. A final alert pinged. The cumulative sum appeared in bold letters across the tablet. $4 billion. Davenport's hands trembled, fingers frozen over the controls. He had no power, no recourse, no authority left to reverse what had happened. His empire's billions had been shifted and secured without his approval. Malik's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. And that, Mr. Davenport, is the cost of arrogance. You ignored a person you deemed insignificant, and in 5 minutes, for billion reasons now prove why that was a mistake. The room fell silent, every board member frozen, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The screens continued to display cascading market adjustments, but the result was undeniable. The $4 billion had been captured, redirected, and secured. Davenport finally looked up, the color drained from his face. I don't even know what to say. Malik's eyes glinted with sharp precision. Say nothing. Watch. Learn. And remember the lesson you refused to see. Elias quietly disconnected the feeds, leaving the boardroom in stunned silence. Every chart, every alert, every indicator of the billion-dollar redirection had vanished, leaving only the confirmation that the transfer was complete and irreversible. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as Davenport realized that his decades of pride, his network of analysts, and his supposed control had been outmaneuvered in minutes. Malik had done more than redirect funds. He had demonstrated dominance, strategy, and the true measure of influence. Malik's voice, calm and deliberate, echoed one final time. And now, the question isn't whether you can recover what was lost. The question is, what will you do when the underestimated show up, fully prepared, and refuse to ask permission? Davenport's hands fell limply onto the table. The realization hit him like a hammer. $4 billion, his pride, his empire, all manipulated and redirected by someone he never respected. The final domino had fallen. The world outside the boardroom would soon react to the unprecedented financial shift. But for Davenport, the lesson was immediate, personal, and devastating. Malik stood, straightening his suit, exuding an air of quiet command. We're done here. The rest is observation. As Malik and Elias exited, leaving Davenport and the stunned board members behind, the final cliffhanger emerged. Outside, the markets were already responding to the unseen hand that had just moved billions. News alerts were beginning to spread. Competitors were sensing anomalies. And somewhere, in the chaos Malik had created, a new opportunity was about to arise. One that could either cement Malik's control or unleash unforeseen consequences that even he hadn't fully predicted. Davenport's empire had survived, but it would never be the same. And the person he had underestimated? Already 10 steps ahead. The first wave of shock had passed. The next wave, public exposure, market upheaval, and global scrutiny, was about to hit. The world woke up to chaos the next morning. Financial news outlets flashed breaking headlines. screens alive with graphs and numbers that seemed almost impossible. $4 billion redirected. Mystery investor behind market shockwave scrolled across every ticker, while analysts struggled to explain the unprecedented shift. Social media erupted. Hashtags trended in minutes. Hashtag billionaire humiliated. Hashtag market mastermind. Hashtag who is Malik Carter. Millions of eyes were now on the event, speculation rampant, power structures trembling. Inside Davenport's office, the billionaire sat slumped, staring blankly at the screens. His empire's pride and influence had been rattled, and he felt it in every nerve. His hand hovered over the phone, wanting to call regulators, the press, anyone. But Malik had anticipated everything. Every communication line, every loophole Davenport might exploit, had been covered. Any move now would only confirm how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. Malik didn't waste time with the boardroom. He moved methodically, ensuring every shift, every redistribution of funds, was irreversible, audit-proof, and traceable only to his team. Elias's fingers danced across multiple encrypted systems, keeping the global markets in a subtle state of flux, guiding billions with invisible precision. But Malik's objective wasn't chaos for chaos's sake. It was proof that underestimation, arrogance, and elitism came at a steep price, and that intelligence, strategy, and courage could reshape power. By mid-morning, Malik initiated the next phase. A press conference was arranged, carefully curated to control the narrative. Journalists from Bloomberg, Reuters, CNBC, and international outlets were gathered in a private hall. Malik entered last, calm, composed, dressed in a sharply tailored suit that screamed authority. He didn't speak immediately. He let cameras roll, journalists shuffle, and the murmurs build tension. Then, without preamble, he began. "Good morning," he said, voice smooth, controlled. "Yesterday, the world witnessed what happens when a person is dismissed because of arrogance, pride, and bias. Today, I want to show you not just what happened, but why it matters." He gestured toward a giant screen behind him. Charts appeared, detailing the markets, flows of billions, and transactions that had previously been invisible to the naked eye. Analysts gasped, some whispering to each other, others checking their devices frantically. "This," Malik continued, "is what discipline, strategy, and precision can achieve. Not for greed, not for revenge, but to prove that control is never guaranteed to those who assume they are untouchable." He paused, letting the words sink in. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of Davenport's face, as the billionaire watched the footage of his own empire being redirected in real time. Then came the bombshell. Malik revealed the identities of key stakeholders who had collaborated unknowingly in the chain of events. Whistleblowers, former executives, analysts who had grown tired of being silenced, and even board members who had been misled into compliance by Davenport's arrogance. Their identities flashed on the screen, along with evidence of their correspondence. The room erupted in whispers, a mixture of shock, awe, and disbelief. "Every system has a flaw," Malik said, voice sharper now. "Every empire has blind spots. Every person who assumes dominance without respect for others will eventually face the consequences of that oversight. And today, we witnessed it unfold in real time." Outside, the global financial world responded immediately. Stocks surged, commodities adjusted, and billions of dollars shifted across banks, hedge funds, and investment platforms. The ripple effects of Malik's maneuver caused a scramble among competitors, regulators, and markets, but all moves were contained within his plan. He had orchestrated the perfect storm. Davenport, humiliated, attempted to speak publicly, to spin a narrative, to regain control, but Malik's team had already ensured that every communication line he could use was monitored and selectively blocked. Every move Davenport made only reinforced the story Malik wanted to tell. That arrogance without foresight and underestimation without respect led to downfall. Then Malik introduced the final element of his plan. The $4 billion would be allocated strategically to initiatives that could create real, lasting change. Education programs, technological innovation for underserved communities, investments in renewable energy, and funding for public projects, all distributed in ways that maximized social impact while remaining untouchable by those who had attempted to exploit and dominate. The billionaire's empire would survive, but it would never again operate in secrecy or arrogance. Its influence was being recalibrated, redistributed to empower the people he had once ignored. Malik smiled faintly as he watched the press release go live, detailing each step, each distribution, each strategic decision. But the final, most satisfying moment wasn't the redistribution of wealth. It was the personal reckoning. Malik orchestrated a private meeting with Davenport, one-on-one. The billionaire entered, face pale, hands trembling, ego shattered. "You think this is over?" Davenport whispered, voice tight with barely contained fury. Malik leaned back, calm, unflinching. "No, it's just beginning. You've learned something yesterday. Today, the world learned it. The rest of your life will remind you. Arrogance has a price, and underestimating people who refuse to ask permission comes at an even higher one." Davenport swallowed, the words cutting deeper than any financial loss could. "And the $4 billion? Allocated," Malik said, "where it will do the most good, and where it cannot be weaponized against the powerless again." The confrontation ended, and Malik left Davenport alone to reflect, knowing that the billionaire's empire could rebuild, but never with the same unchecked confidence. The lesson had been delivered, personal and public. Within days, the story went viral. Investors, analysts, journalists, and ordinary people worldwide debated Malik's actions, the redistribution, and the message it sent. Every major news network ran segments detailing the $4 billion shift, the precision, the strategy, and the courage of the man who refused to ask for permission. And Malik? He disappeared from the public eye, leaving behind a transformed world. Markets stabilized under the new flows, communities flourished with the newly allocated resources, and Davenport spent the next months reconciling his pride with reality. Months later, Malik's influence became apparent in ways no one could have anticipated. Startups in underserved areas flourished thanks to strategic investment. Technological innovations accelerated because capital was now accessible to people who had been overlooked for decades. Education programs empowered millions, reshaping talent pipelines and opportunity networks worldwide. Through it all, Malik remained unseen, orchestrating from behind the scenes, ensuring that the lesson in humility, foresight, and respect persisted. And somewhere, in boardrooms, trading floors, and luxury offices, the whisper spread: never underestimate the person you dismiss. The story of the black man who pulled $4 billion in support and humbled a billionaire who refused to shake hands became legend. Not because of wealth gained or power exercised, but because it demonstrated that courage, strategy, and respect for the underestimated could change the course of the world. As the sun set, Malik stood on a balcony overlooking a city transformed, the skyline reflecting the promise of a new order. He whispered to himself, a small smile forming. Never ask permission. Only execute. And always honor those who others refuse to see. The world had changed in 5 minutes, but the ripple effects would last a lifetime. And Malik? He had only just begun.